Imagine walking down a bustling city street, your mind preoccupied with the day's tasks, when suddenly you lock eyes with a figure huddled in a doorway. Now imagine that you're Elon Musk, and that figure is a homeless black veteran with a story that will change your perspective forever. This isn't fiction. This is the true account of an encounter that challenges our preconceptions about wealth, race, and the human experience. Are you ready to see the world through a different lens? The bustling city street pulsed with energy as Elon Musk strode purposefully along the sidewalk. His tailored suit and polished shoes stood in a stark contrast to the grime and wear of the urban landscape. Lost in thought about his latest project, Musk nearly collided with a figure huddled in a doorway. Time seemed to slow as Musk's gaze fell upon the man before him. The veteran's weathered face and tattered clothing told a story of hardship that felt worlds away from Musk's life of luxury and innovation. For a moment, discomfort flashed across Musk's face. His instinct was to hurry past, to return to the familiar world of boardrooms and rocket launches. But something made him pause. The veteran's eyes, deep and piercing, held a wisdom that cut through Musk's initial unease. Those eyes spoke of experiences far beyond Musk's understanding, of battles fought both on foreign soil and on these very streets. Musk hesitated, his hand tightening on his briefcase. The cacophony of the city seemed to fade away as he stood there, caught between two worlds. In that moment, he faced a choice: continue on his way or step into unfamiliar territory. With a deep breath, Musk made his decision. He lowered himself to the ground, sitting beside the veteran on the cold concrete. The simple act bridged a vast divide, bringing two men from vastly different circumstances to the same level. As Musk settled in, questions raced through his mind. What could he, a tech billionaire, possibly have in common with this homeless veteran? What insights might this man offer that couldn't be found in the halls of Silicon Valley? The air between them crackled with potential, the promise of an exchange that could challenge preconceptions on both sides. The veteran's posture shifted slightly, a mix of wariness and curiosity in his expression. He hadn't expected this encounter any more than Musk had. For years, people had hurried past him, averting their eyes from the uncomfortable reality he represented. Now, one of the world's most recognizable figures sat beside him, ready to listen. As the two men faced each other, the busy street around them seemed to recede. The honking of horns and chatter of passers-by faded into a dull murmur. In this unexpected bubble of calm, a conversation was about to unfold that would challenge Musk's understanding of privilege, resilience, and the true cost of progress. The veteran cleared his throat, his voice rough from disuse but steady with an inner strength. "Name's James," he said, extending a calloused hand. Musk took it, feeling the years of hardship etched into James's palm. With that simple gesture, the barriers between them began to crumble, setting the stage for an exchange that would leave both men forever changed. James's firm handshake belied the fragility of the moment. One wrong word could shatter this tenuous connection. But as the conversation unfolded, both men would discover that sometimes the most powerful insights come from the most unexpected places. What would Musk learn from a man society had forgotten? Musk cleared his throat, suddenly aware of the gulf between them. "I'm Elon," he said, his voice softer than usual. The name hung in the air, loaded with unspoken implications of wealth and status. James nodded, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant rumble of traffic. Gathering his courage, Musk ventured, "So, James, how long have you—" He trailed off, unsure how to finish the question without sounding insensitive. James's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something, amusement, challenge, passing across his weathered features. "How long have I been invisible?" James finished for him, his tone level but with an undercurrent of steel. "Or did you mean to ask how long I've been homeless? Because those aren't always the same thing, Mr. Musk." The words hit Musk like a physical blow. He blinked, momentarily at a loss. This wasn't a boardroom negotiation or a media interview. Here, his usual arsenal of charm and business acumen felt woefully inadequate. James leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving Musk's face. "Let me ask you something," he said, his voice low and measured. "When was the last time you walked down a street and felt truly unseen? Not recognized, not avoided, but genuinely invisible?" Musk opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. The question peeled away layers of assumptions he hadn't even realized he held. He thought of the constant attention, the ceaseless scrutiny that came with his position. When had he last yearned for anonymity? Seeing Musk's hesitation, James's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan," he said, his eyes taking on a faraway look. "I've seen things that would turn your stomach and met men braver than you could imagine. But nothing prepared me for coming home and becoming a ghost in my own country." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken history. Musk found himself leaning in, hunger for understanding overriding his initial discomfort. This wasn't a data point or a statistic. This was a man with a story, one that challenged everything Musk thought he knew about success, struggle, and the human spirit. I don't know what to say," Musk admitted, the unfamiliar feeling of being out of his depth settling over him. "But I want to understand. If you're willing to share, I'm here to listen." Something shifted in James's demeanor at those words. The wariness didn't disappear entirely, but it was joined by a cautious openness. "Well," he said, a hint of a wry smile touching his lips, "we've got time, and it's a long story." As James began to speak, the busy street around them faded into the background. The conversation that unfolded over the next hours would challenge Musk's perceptions, ignite his empathy, and ultimately set in motion a chain of events that neither man could have predicted. In that moment, on a grimy sidewalk far from the corridors of power, 2 worlds collided, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The bustling city street pulsed with energy as Elon Musk sat beside James, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the veteran's worn attire. As the cacophony of traffic faded into the background, James's voice cut through the noise with a startling revelation. "Do you know what it's like to be a ghost in broad daylight?" he asked, his eyes fixed on Musk. The question hung in the air, heavy with untold stories and unseen struggles. James began to recount his daily experiences, each word painting a vivid picture of societal blindness. "People walk by me every day like I don't exist," he said, his voice steady but tinged with resignation. "They avert their eyes, quicken their pace, or simply stare through me as if I'm part of the scenery." He described the countless times he had reached out for help, only to be met with empty stares or hurried excuses. As James spoke, Musk felt a growing discomfort. He recognized his own behavior in the stories James shared. How many times had he rushed past someone in need, too preoccupied with his own thoughts to acknowledge their existence? The realization settled like a weight on his shoulders, a mix of shame and dawning understanding. James continued, his words revealing the deep psychological toll of constant social rejection. "It's not just about being homeless," he explained. "It's about feeling like you've ceased to matter as a human being." He described the gradual erosion of self-worth, the creeping despair that comes from being treated as invisible day after day. Musk listened intently, his mind racing to process this new perspective. He thought of the research he'd read on social invisibility, recalling studies that showed up to 80% of people ignore homeless individuals when walking by them. The statistics had seemed abstract before, but now they took on a painful, human dimension. As James spoke about the long-term mental health impacts of being socially invisible, Musk found himself grappling with a profound sense of empathy. He imagined the weight of feeling dehumanized, the constant battle against isolation and worthlessness. The contrast between James's experiences and his own life of constant recognition and validation was stark and unsettling. "How do you cope?" Musk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. James paused, considering the question. "Some days are harder than others," he admitted, "but I try to remember that I'm more than what people see or don't see. I've got stories, skills, dreams. Just because they were invisible to others doesn't mean they don't exist." The gravity of James's words settled over them both. Musk felt a surge of shame for his past indifference. coupled with a growing determination to understand more. He realized that this conversation was challenging his entire worldview, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege and perception. "James," Musk said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want to hear more. If you're willing to share, I'm here to listen. Really listen." The veteran studied Musk's face, perhaps searching for signs of insincerity. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "All right," James replied. "Let me tell you about the day I became invisible." As James began his story, the busy street around them seemed to fade away entirely. The conversation deepened, each word bridging the vast gulf between their experiences and opening a window into a world Musk had never truly seen before. James cleared his throat, preparing to unravel the complex tapestry of his life. "You know, Mr. Musk, there's a statistic that might surprise you," he began. "Black veterans are more than twice as likely to end up homeless compared to other vets. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Let me show you how easily the American dream can slip through your fingers, even when you've bled for it." As James spoke, his eyes took on a distant look, as if gazing into the past. He recounted his years of military service with a mix of pride and wistfulness, the structure, the camaraderie, the sense of purpose. All of it had given him a feeling of belonging he'd rarely experienced before. When his tours ended, James returned home with a heart full of optimism and a resume bolstered by his time in uniform. "I thought I had it made," James said, a rueful smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Veteran status, specialized training, a stack of commendations. Who wouldn't want to hire me?" The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "Turns out, a lot of people." James described the frustrating cycle of job applications and rejections. At first, he chalked it up to bad luck or a tough job market. But as the months wore on, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. "I'd get called in for interviews based on my qualifications," he explained. "But as soon as they saw me, saw the color of my skin, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't quite the right fit for the company culture." Musk listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. The stark reality of James's experiences was a far cry from the meritocracy Musk had always believed in. As James continued, the compounding effects of racial discrimination and veteran status became painfully clear. "There was this one job," James said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion, "IT specialist position. I was overqualified, if anything. The phone interview went great, but when I showed up in person..." He shook his head. The interviewer couldn't hide his surprise, kept asking about my cultural fit and whether I'd be comfortable in their environment. I knew right then I wouldn't get the job. The rejection stung, but it was just one in a long series of setbacks. James described how each closed door chipped away at his confidence, his savings, and his hope for the future. The stress took its toll on his relationships, his mental health, and eventually his ability to keep a roof over his head. "It's a slippery slope," James said, his gaze locked with Musk's. "One day you're a proud veteran with dreams of a civilian career. The next you're choosing between a meal and bus fare to another dead-end interview. Before you know it, you're sleeping in shelters, then on the streets." As James's story unfolded, Musk began to grasp the complex web of factors that could lead a skilled veteran to homelessness. It wasn't just about individual choices or bad luck. It was about systemic barriers, unconscious biases, and the crushing weight of constant rejection. "I never thought I'd end up here," James said, gesturing to the street around them. "But when the world keeps telling you you're invisible, eventually you start to believe it." Musk nodded slowly, the full impact of James's words sinking in. He realized that understanding veteran homelessness meant looking beyond simple explanations. It required acknowledging the intersection of race, service, and societal prejudice. A reality far more complex than he had ever imagined. The stark contrast between their daily realities couldn't have been starker. While Musk couldn't go anywhere without being recognized, James faced a very different reality. What happens when society looks right through you? James's words hung heavy in the air, each syllable a weight pressing down on Musk's conscience. "People walk by me every day like I don't exist," James said, his voice steady but tinged with a resignation that spoke volumes. "It's as if I'm part of the scenery, no more noticeable than a fire hydrant or a street sign. Musk shifted uncomfortably, the cold concrete beneath him a stark reminder of the gulf between their worlds. He tried to imagine a life without the constant validation he received, the admiring glances, the requests for selfies, the media attention that followed his every move. The very thought made him feel oddly exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't experienced in years. "I can't remember the last time I wasn't recognized," Musk admitted, the words feeling hollow even as he spoke them. He watched James's face, searching for a reaction, but the veteran's expression remained impassive. James nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "Imagine the opposite," he said. "Imagine reaching out for help day after day and being met with empty stares or hurried excuses. Imagine feeling like you've ceased to matter as a human being." The weight of James's words settled over Musk like a heavy blanket. He thought of the countless times he'd walked past homeless individuals, averting his gaze or quickening his pace. How many Jameses had he ignored, too preoccupied with his own thoughts to acknowledge their existence? "It's not just about being homeless," James continued, his voice low but steady. "It's the emotional toll of feeling unseen, unvalued by society. It chips away at you, bit by bit, until you start to question your own worth." Musk listened intently, his mind racing to process this new perspective. He recalled the statistics he'd read about social invisibility, studies showing that up to 80% of people ignore homeless individuals when walking by them. But those numbers had been abstract, clinical. Now, faced with James's lived experience, they took on a painful, human dimension. "How do you cope?" Musk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. James paused, considering the question. "Some days are harder than others," he admitted, "but I try to remember that I'm more than what people see or don't see. I've got stories, skills, dreams. Just because they're invisible to others doesn't mean they don't exist." The gravity of the moment settled over them both. Musk felt a surge of shame for his past indifference, coupled with a growing determination to understand more. He realized that this conversation was challenging his entire worldview, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege and perception. "James," Musk said, his voice thick with emotion, I've never truly understood what it means to be invisible like that. I've been so caught up in my own world, I've failed to see the struggles of people like you." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I know it doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I see you now, and I'm listening." As the words left his mouth, Musk felt a shift in the dynamic between them. The initial awkwardness had given way to something deeper, a connection forged through raw honesty and shared humanity. He leaned in, ready to ask more questions, to truly understand James' experiences and perspective. "Tell me more," Musk said, his voice quiet but intent. "What do you think needs to change? How can people like me make a real difference?" As Musk leaned in, eager to learn more, James surprised him with an unexpected question. "What's the latest on the Starship project?" The billionaire's eyes widened. How did a homeless veteran know about SpaceX's most advanced rocket? This moment would challenge everything Musk thought he knew about innovation and its reach. Musk's initial excitement to discuss his work quickly gave way to a sobering realization. He found himself explaining recent developments in SpaceX and Tesla, his words tumbling out with familiar enthusiasm. But as he spoke, he noticed a change in James's expression. The veteran listened intently, his eyes sharp with understanding, but a shadow of frustration crossed his weathered features. "It's incredible the things you're achieving," James said, his voice tinged with a complex mix of admiration and something darker. "But you know what? All that innovation, all that progress, it might as well be happening on Mars for all the good it does me and others like me." The words hit Musk like a physical blow. He fell silent, suddenly aware of the vast gulf between his world of cutting-edge technology and James's daily struggle for survival. James continued, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "You talk about electric cars and space travel, but do you know what my biggest technological challenge is? Trying to apply for a job online when I don't have a computer or internet access. James gestured to the busy street around them. Libraries have limited hours and long wait times. Internet cafes cost money I don't have. It's like watching the world sprint ahead while I'm stuck in quicksand. Musk listened, a growing sense of unease settling in his stomach. He had always seen his work as pushing humanity forward, but James's words forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. Innovation, unchecked, could create new forms of inequality. James described the frustration of being unable to access online resources, of watching job opportunities slip away because he couldn't submit applications electronically. It's not just about job, he added. It's healthcare information, education resources, even staying connected with family. The world is going digital, and people like me are being left behind. As James spoke, Musk's mind raced. He thought of the countless meetings where user accessibility had been an afterthought, if it was considered at all. How many Jameses had his companies inadvertently sidelined in their rush to innovate? I never thought, Musk began, then stopped, searching for the right words. I always saw technology as a great equalizer. But you're right, we've been blind to how it can create new barriers. James nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. It doesn't have to be that way, he said. Technology could be a lifeline for people like me if it's designed with us in mind. Musk felt a shift in his perspective, a new understanding dawning. His work had always been about pushing boundaries, but now he saw a new frontier, bridging the divide between cutting-edge innovation and those most in need of its benefits. James, Musk said, his voice filled with newfound determination, I think you've just helped me see my next big challenge. How do we make sure no one gets left behind in this technological revolution? As they began to brainstorm ideas, the busy street around them faded into the background. A new partnership was forming, one that would challenge preconceptions and push the boundaries of inclusive innovation. You know, Mr. Musk, in another life, I could have been working alongside you, James said, his eyes distant with memory. This simple statement was about to unlock a conversation that would reshape Musk's entire approach to technological development. What hidden talents and perspectives had society been missing all along? James's words hung in the air, heavy with possibility and regret. Musk leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What do you mean? He asked, his voice soft but eager. The veteran's weathered face softened, a hint of long-buried passion flickering in his eyes. Before I enlisted, I was on track to become an engineer, James revealed. I had dreams of designing sustainable energy systems, of solving the world's most pressing problems through innovation. Musk's eyes widened, a sudden connection sparking between them. Here, amidst the grime and noise of the city street, he found an unexpected kindred spirit. What happened? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. James sighed, his gaze dropping to his worn hands. Life, Mr. Musk. Life happened. Family obligations, financial pressures, then the call to serve. He paused, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. But that passion never really went away. Even out here, I can't help but look at the world and see problems waiting to be solved. As James spoke, Musk felt a growing sense of unease. Here was a man with a brilliant mind, a problem solver at heart, reduced to invisibility on the streets. How many other potential world changers had been lost to circumstance? Tell me, Musk said, his voice intense, if you had the resources, what problems would you tackle first? James didn't hesitate. Access, he said firmly. Technology has the power to uplift, but only if people can reach it. We need solutions that bridge the digital divide, that bring the benefits of innovation to everyone, not just those who can afford the latest gadgets. As James outlined his ideas, Musk listened with growing admiration. The veteran's perspectives were unique, shaped by his experiences both in service and on the streets. He spoke of mobile charging stations for the homeless, of simplified interfaces for job application systems, of AI-driven outreach programs to connect veterans with resources. You know, Musk said slowly, these are angles we've never even considered. We've been so focused on pushing the boundaries of what's possible, we've lost sight of who we're leaving behind. James nodded, a spark of his old passion visible in his eyes. That's the thing about innovation, Mr. Musk. It's not just about creating something new. It's about making sure that new actually improves lives across the board. As their conversation deepened, Musk found himself reassessing James. This wasn't just a man in need of help. This was a potential collaborator, a mind brimming with insights that could reshape the very foundation of technological development. "James," Musk said, his voice filled with a new determination, "I think we need to continue this conversation. Your perspectives, your experiences, they're invaluable. Would you be willing to work with me to help ensure our innovations truly serve everyone?" The veteran's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and cautious hope crossing his face. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Musk nodded firmly. "Absolutely. We've been missing a crucial voice in our development process. Your insights could be the key to creating truly inclusive technology." As they began to discuss the practicalities of this unexpected partnership, the busy street around them faded into the background. A new chapter was unfolding, one that promised to bridge the gap between cutting-edge innovation and those who needed it most. With the promise of collaboration still hanging in the air, James leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Mr. Musk," he began, "you've changed the world with your innovations. But have you ever considered that your approach to giving might be just as outdated as the technologies you've replaced?" The veteran's question was about to shatter Musk's perception of his own philanthropic efforts. Musk felt a jolt of surprise at James's directness. He'd always prided himself on his charitable contributions, but now, faced with the raw reality of James's experiences, doubt crept in. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. James's weathered face softened slightly, but his gaze remained steady. "Look, I appreciate the donations to big charities, I do. But from where I'm sitting, it often feels like throwing money at symptoms rather than addressing the root causes." The words hit Musk like a physical blow. He thought of the millions he'd given to various organizations, the press releases touting his generosity. But had any of it truly made a difference to people like James? "Tell me more," Musk said, his voice thick with emotion. "What does meaningful assistance look like from your perspective?" James took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the busy street around them. "It's about dignity, Mr. Musk. It's about giving people the tools to rebuild their lives, not just a handout. Job training programs that actually lead to employment, mental health support that's accessible and long-term, affordable housing initiatives that don't push us out of our communities." As James spoke, Musk felt a shift in his understanding. He'd always approached philanthropy from a distance, trusting established charities to do the work. But here, sitting on the cold concrete beside a man who lived the struggle, he realized the limitations of that approach. "You're right," Musk admitted, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "I've been so focused on the big picture, I've lost sight of the individuals affected. But how do we bridge that gap?" James's eyes lit up with a spark of hope. "Involve us in the process," he said firmly. "Don't just throw money at the problem. Come to the shelters, the soup kitchens, the streets. Listen to our stories, our ideas. We know what we need better than anyone." The conversation deepened, with James offering insights on community-led initiatives and the importance of sustainable, long-term solutions. Musk listened intently, his mind racing with new possibilities. He saw now that true social responsibility went beyond writing checks. It required genuine engagement and a willingness to challenge the status quo. As the sun began to dip low in the sky, Musk felt a surge of determination. "James," he said, his voice steady with newfound purpose, "I want to do things differently. Will you help me? I need your perspective, your experiences, to guide a new approach to addressing homelessness and social inequality." James studied Musk's face, perhaps searching for signs of insincerity. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "All right," he said, extending his hand. "But remember, this isn't about quick fixes or good PR. It's about real, lasting change." Musk grasped James's hand firmly, the contrast between their circumstances fading in the face of their shared determination. As they began to discuss specific ideas for immediate action and long-term strategies, the busy street around them hummed with new possibility. A billionaire's awakening had begun, promising to reshape the landscape of social responsibility in ways neither man could have imagined just hours before. The evening air grew cooler as Musk and James leaned in closer, their unlikely partnership taking shape on the bustling city sidewalk. The contrast between them had faded, replaced by a shared determination to tackle the complex issue of veteran homelessness. "Let's start with the basics," James said, his voice steady with newfound purpose. "We need to address immediate needs without losing sight of long-term solutions." Musk nodded, pulling out his phone to take notes. The billionaire's fingers hovered over the screen, ready to capture every insight. James began outlining key areas for immediate impact. "Housing first," he emphasized. "We need safe, stable places for veterans to live while they rebuild their lives." Musk's brow furrowed as he considered the logistics. "What about converting unused buildings into temporary housing?" he suggested. James nodded approvingly, adding, "And we need to ensure these spaces are close to job opportunities and support services." As they delved deeper into potential solutions, the challenge of balancing quick fixes with sustainable change became apparent. "We can't just put a Band-Aid on this," James cautioned. "Every short-term solution needs to feed into a longer-term strategy." Musk's eyes lit up as he saw connections forming. "What if we created partnerships between tech companies and veteran organizations?" he proposed. "We could develop job training programs tailored to the skills most in demand in the tech industry." James considered this, his expression thoughtful. "That could work, but we need to ensure these programs are accessible. Remember, many homeless vets don't have reliable internet access or the latest devices." Their conversation flowed back and forth, each idea building on the last. They discussed mobile outreach units equipped with technology for job searches and skill assessments. James emphasized the importance of mental health support, suggesting apps that could connect veterans with counselors and peer support groups. As their brainstorming session intensified, James paused, his gaze intense. "Mr. Musk, there's something crucial we can't forget," he said. "In all of this planning and developing, we need to involve homeless individuals at every step. We're the experts on our own experiences." Musk nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of James's words. "You're absolutely right," he agreed. "We need to create a task force, with homeless and formerly homeless veterans leading the way. Your insights are invaluable." As the conversation began to wind down, both men felt a sense of accomplishment tinged with the enormity of the task ahead. Musk scrolled through the notes on his phone, his mind already racing with next steps. "James," he said, his voice firm with commitment, "I want to put this plan into action. Within the next month, I'll allocate resources to launch pilot programs for housing and job training, and I want you to be part of the team overseeing it all." James studied Musk's face, perhaps searching for any hint of insincerity. Finding none, he extended his hand. "I'm in," he said simply. As they shook hands, the busy street around them seemed to fade away. Two men from vastly different worlds had found common ground, forging an unlikely alliance that held the promise of real change. The first steps of their journey were mapped out, but both knew the real work was just beginning. With a promise of collaboration still hanging in the air, Musk leaned forward, his eyes intense with newfound determination. The bustling city street faded into the background as he spoke, his voice steady and sincere. "James, I want you to know that this conversation has changed everything for me," Musk began. "I'm committing here and now to use every resource at my disposal, every ounce of influence I have, to make a real difference in the lives of veterans like yourself." James listened carefully, his weathered face a mixture of hope and caution. He'd heard promises before, seen well-meaning initiatives come and go. But there was something different in Musk's tone, a raw honesty that cut through his usual skepticism. Musk continued, outlining his vision. "We're going to create a task force, led by people who've lived this experience. I want you at the helm, James. Your insights, your understanding of the real challenges facing homeless veterans, that's invaluable. We'll tackle this from every angle: housing, job training, mental health support, technological access, and we'll do it in a way that respects the dignity and autonomy of every individual we help." As Musk spoke, James felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine hope. He watched the billionaire's face, searching for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, he allowed himself to consider the possibilities. "It won't be easy," James cautioned, his voice gravelly with emotion. There's a lot of mistrust to overcome, a lot of systemic barriers we'll need to address. Musk nodded, acknowledging the challenge. I know, and I know I have a lot to learn. That's why I need your guidance, your expertise. This isn't about quick fixes or good PR. It's about creating lasting, meaningful change. James considered for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential for real impact. Finally, he extended his hand. All right, Mr. Musk, I'm willing to give this a shot. But remember, this partnership goes both ways. You listen to us, really listen, and we'll work together to make this happen. Musk grasped James's hand firmly, the contrast in their circumstances fading in the face of their shared commitment. Agreed, he said, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Let's exchange contact information. I want to set up our first meeting as soon as possible. As they swapped details, the reality of their unlikely alliance began to sink in. A tech billionaire and a homeless veteran joining forces to tackle one of society's most persistent challenges. The odds were stacked against them, but in that moment, anything seemed possible. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the city street, Musk and James parted ways. Each man carried with him a renewed sense of purpose, a shared vision for a future where no veteran would be left behind. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with obstacles, but they had taken the first crucial step. A promise had been made, a partnership forged in the most unexpected of circumstances, and with it, the potential for real, lasting change had been set in motion. As the sun dipped below the city skyline, Musk and James stood, their unexpected encounter drawing to a close. The bustling street had faded into background noise, overshadowed by the profound connection forged between two men from vastly different worlds. Their conversation had bridged a chasm of experience, challenging preconceptions and igniting a spark of change. Musk felt the weight of his newfound understanding. His perspective irrevocably shifted. He realized that true progress wasn't just about technological innovation, but about ensuring that innovation reached those who needed it most. James, for his part, stood a little taller, his weathered face touched by a glimmer of hope long forgotten. As they parted ways, the power of their exchange lingered in the air. It served as a testament to the transformative potential of genuine human connection, of truly seeing and hearing those society often overlooks. Their unlikely partnership held the promise of real, lasting change. In the words of a wise observer, helping people isn't about money, it's about showing up. Musk and James had done just that, showing up for each other in a way that transcended their circumstances. Their story serves as a powerful reminder of what's possible when privilege meets perspective, when we dare to step outside our comfort zones and truly listen.